In the world of political character assassinations, the Democrats are less sniper and more suicide bomber on a zealous quest for the 72 aborted fetuses that awaits them in paradise, as promised by their postmodernist faith fusion of Islamo-Satanism. And if that didn't make any sense to you, well, don't worry about it, because we're talking about fucking Democrats.
Let me tell them who I am. Well, I came. I'm a man. 6 shooters in both my hands. I'm a cold-blooded brother, a real bad mother. Watch out, honey, here I am.
I know that intro was a little out there, but as we all anticipate an Amy Coney Barrett nomination from Trump on Saturday, the left is already putting out hit pieces, and we know that their main line of attack is going to be her Christian faith values. And while the left is always has a soft spot for Islam, they absolutely hate Christianity, mainly because it is a pro-life idea. Honestly, Islam is too, but because it's not very prevalent here, it gets that underdog status. But they are going to go against Amy Coney Barrett because they are worried that she is going to go after Roe vs. Wade. And that is what all of the political rancor about the Supreme Court is about anyways. It's about the right to kill their babies, which I think is evil. So there you get that fusion of Islamo-Satanism. So we already have Politico has put out a hit piece on Amy Coney Barrett. And we can see here, it's open season on Amy Coney Barrett. The appeals court judge reported to be reported at top President Trump's list of candidates to fill the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat on the Supreme Court. Barrett is a devout Roman Catholic and a member of an ecumenical, that's a hard word to say, ecumenical charismatic community. So naturally, Democrats and their media allies are trying to cast her as a dangerous threat. Because, you know, they hate Christianity because they know that it is the foundation of Western society, which is another reason why they have a soft spot for Islam. Islam tends to be very anti-West. And so it's another intersectional coalition to them. And of course, if Islam ever did gain root here and they started implementing Sharia law and certain fundamentalist Islam strictures, they'd realize that they just, they traded down. They traded down quite a bit. So never mind that the U.S. Constitution bars any such interrogation. So, oh yeah, they're talking about how, sorry, I'm skipping around here. So they're going to view her as a dangerous theocrat. I think I said threat a minute ago. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to make it sound like she is going to rule everything based on her Christian religious values. And never mind the fact that the U.S. Constitution bars such interrogation. No religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. And the author of this Politico report, political article, I guess his name is Massimo Fagioli. That's a hilarious name if I've ever heard one. So they say the first error that he made is Barrett's community covenant is no secret. And it says, actually, senators won't need to go sleuthing through a dusty Vatican archives because they can find the POP, which is the People of Praise, which she's part of, the POP's community covenant with a simple Google search. And it's about as anodyne as you'd expect with the vows of an ecumenical group devoted to living a wholesome, godly life. I mean, it basically just says, we're going to live a clean life. And, oh, the danger. Oh, the terror. So, the second error is that, she's a member of Opus Dei as well. And I guess Opus Dei was cast as some, like, cloak and dagger secret society in, what was that Tom Hanks movie? The Da Vinci Code. I think that was Opus Dei that they cast as like the crazy cloak and dagger secret society type thing, but in real life it's really anything but. So they say some people might understandably balk at having a member of a religious order or Opus Dei sit on the Supreme Court. But at least in these communities, the vow of obedience that such a person has made to be visible, formal, and accountable. Well, actually, Opus Dei members don't profess any vows at all. So he doesn't seem to understand what Opus Dei actually is. And again, he talks about how some people might understandably balk at having a member of a religious order. Well, again, to question somebody's religion is unconstitutional. which is why I hope that we don't have any, well, you know what? I'm on YouTube. I should probably censor myself here. I hate having to say that. I hate ever having to censor myself, but I think that my next statement might have gotten me in a little bit of trouble. So the third error is that Pope Francis doesn't disdain Barrett's group. So Fagioli tries to paint POP as somehow a renegade Catholic order, disdained by the Pope. But they're not. They're not. And all he did was try to warn that these these new Catholic communities like POP not usurp the individual freedom of members, which doesn't sound like that's an issue with these people. So it says here, the Pope's warning, of course, is a valid one, but it applies not just to Barrett's community, but to any group within the Catholic Church. So, yeah, they're trying to take a broad argument and then narrow it down just so they can attack Amy Coney Barrett. And this guy Fagioli says, I am a Catholic scholar, and I've written 2 books on the types of religious communities that Barrett is a member of. You know what? He might be a religious scholar, but I'm willing to bet he's also a Democrat. Which means you just can't trust him. Which means he probably places his he's a Catholic scholar in the Order of Democratus. And that's probably where he places his vows, is in the Order of Democratus. So I think before anything, his anti-Trump fervor is probably going to take precedent over any kind of honesty about the religious accuracy of these groups that she's part of. But we have also this article here from the Federalist, and I like the Federalist quite a bit, but it's actually one of my favorite sites, but I'm kind of a little bit in disagreement. I'm a little torn on this one, so maybe you guys can work through this one with me here. So the idea is that Democrats have made it clear we don't need hearings on Trump's nominee. And while part of me is just like, yes, just ram it through, get it over with, wipe your hands clean. Well, let's get into this, and then I'll break down where I think they might be a little bit short-sighted at certain times. So it says, spoiler alert, no Democrats are going to vote for President Trump's nominee to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg when Republicans bring the issue to a vote in the coming weeks. And they said, so that being the case, we have to ask ourselves whether holding hearings for the nominee that are guaranteed to turn into a hellscape of acrimony would actually achieve anything. And I think they're looking at this from a very, very tunnel vision point of view. Will it do anything in terms of whether or not whoever is selected, whether it's Amy Coney Barrett or anybody else, actually gets confirmed or not? No, I don't think it will. But I think politically speaking, in the broader sense, holding hearings could actually have a pretty significant impact. So they talk about the halcyon days where, back then, when they had a hearing to confirm a Supreme Court justice, it was really just to make sure they were qualified, and it really didn't have the political partisanship that it does today. I mean, today, any kind of nomination is split almost entirely down party lines. And you have a couple things to thank for that. One is, of course, Roe v. Wade, and I've talked about this before, how Roe v. Wade essentially bypassed the legislature to create a constitutional amendment without actually creating a constitutional amendment. And so it was an absolute bastardization of checks and balances. The judiciary went far outside of their scope in ruling that based on the enumerations and the penumbras of the ideas, the whispers of the right to privacy, you have a right to kill your baby. It's a completely, not even from, if you were an honest person and you were still pro-choice, you would still admit that Roe v. Wade was not a good ruling from a constitutional sense, if you're being totally honest, because there is no actual legal defense for Roe v. Wade being a legitimate constitutional ruling. In fact, it was designed to supersede the Constitution, go around the Constitution, and amend it without ever going through the process of amending anything. And ever since then, it's become a much more partisan issue. We had what we call borking with Robert Bork. because they were afraid that he was going to overturn Roe versus Wade. We saw it with Clarence Thomas back in, I think it was 91. They trotted out Anita Hill and pulled out that whole fake thing. He still made it through there. But then we've seen it all the way through again, all the way down to Kavanaugh. And it's a really big issue because what that proved to the Democrats was that they could, if they had the right people on the Supreme Court, do whatever they want, constitutional or not. And it kind of goes to show the fact that the Democrats are so hell-bent on defending an unconstitutional ruling that their agenda likely isn't constitutional. And that is why they screech and scream every time that every time they think that they might not have a majority on the court, or that it's not going to be at least balanced. Every time they think they're going to be underhanded, or they're going to be the underdogs, they scream, because it's going to affect their agenda. If we get a conservative Supreme Court, all of a sudden all the gun laws they want to pass that are unconstitutional, by definition, shall not be infringed. Plain and clear English. They're not going to be able to do that if they don't have control of the Supreme Court. So to the Democrats, it's all about violating our rights as citizens of this country. That's what the Supreme Court is about. It's not about upholding the Constitution. It's about having the power to circumvent the Constitution in order to violate our constitutional rights. So that should be stood in the way of. Absolutely. But they go on to say that the only reason to hold any hearing is so that a case can be made in favor or against something. If a bunch of vegetarians are trying to figure out what to order for dinner, they don't need to hold a hearing to rule out cheeseburgers. Again, they're looking at this very myopically. They're not looking at the political ramifications, because it's not. First of all, we're in an election year, so politics are front and center, and so are the candidates. And we all saw what happened in the Brett Kavanaugh case. That happened in early 2018. By the time the election cycle came by in 2018, Kavanaugh, so much had gone through in the news cycle that Kavanaugh was almost an afterthought. But nonetheless, even with it not being fresh in everybody's mind, the Democrats still lost, I think it was 4 seats. The Republicans gained further control of the Senate. So we all saw that Kavanaugh lost favor. So it's not just President Trump, because we also have senators that are up for re-election right now. So if we trot out, let's assume it's Amy Coney Barrett. This might not age well by tomorrow. We'll have to see. So this might not age well, but given that it's Amy Coney Barrett, they're going to go after her based on her religion. And what we saw from the Brett Kavanaugh is that they are going to go after her hard, and they're going to unload everything that they have on her. And if religion is the cudgel that they use against her with such malicious fervor, do you really think that's going to play well to the American people just weeks before the election, when it's still going to be fresh in everybody's mind? No. And so, A, it's likely going to help Donald Trump win the election, but B, it might also, because we're going to have senators out there actually on television confronting, assuming Amy Coney Barrett, confronting her on her religious principles, and they're going to look very anti-Christian to a largely Christian country. And so it could be very deleterious to many of the senators that are up for re-election. Even if they aren't the ones that are front and center on camera doing the interrogating, people are going to see how the Democrats are going after religion, and they're going to say, I'm not going to vote for a Democrat. So there's sort of a political cat and mouse that I think this article is undercutting a little bit. So at the end of the day, I think that we should actually have these hearings, but we can't let them be a runaway train either. We have to know when to pull the plug. We need to have the hearings just long enough to expose the Democrats for their anti-Christian values. Just long enough, because they're going to do that thinking that they're championing their own side, because for some reason the Democrats have zero finger on the pulse of mainstream America. And that's a byproduct of having absolute total control of the cultural institutions in this country. It's created an echo chamber that is not as influential as they think it is, but because it is so pervasive, because it is so omniscient, They think that everybody is just in on the same culture. They think that they have the upper hand, not really understanding that day-to-day Americans, people like you, people like me, we are not on board with all of the agenda items of the establishment. And just because it's everywhere doesn't mean that most people agree with it. And more that has been exposed. But the Democrats never seem to be able to learn. And we know that they can't learn because we've seen how time and time again they have gone after Trump. I mean, they're Wile E. Coyote going after the Roadrunner. That's who the Democrats are at this point. So why interrupt your enemy when they're about to make a mistake? Just do like a week of hearings or something. A few days. Just a few days to let the people see how much disdain they have for religious people in this country. And they're not going to be winning over any votes outside of the people who already have their votes. So they're not going to be winning over any new votes. The only people who are going to look at that and cheer it on are the far left atheists. But most people are not that way. You know, even if you're not Christian, you believe in God, you believe in something, you at least have a sort of reverence for Christianity because you understand that the founding principles of this nation, the ideas of freedom and liberty, all are informed by Christianity. You know, it's funny, a lot of people don't realize that. You know, a lot of even atheists, you know, you'll give them a situation, you'll say, do you think this is wrong or right? And they'll say, oh, well, that's wrong. And you say, well, why is it wrong? Well, because it's immoral. Well, where does your moral framework come from? It comes from Christianity, because there are other places in the world that don't have any Christian framework, or maybe not even any religious framework, and they don't have a problem with just going around shooting anybody. I mean, look at the damn communists. The communists, Vladimir Lenin said that our platform necessarily includes the propaganda of atheism, and when you take away that moral structure of any kind of religious, spiritual context, and you have a totally atheistic dogma, then you're going to lose all of your sense of moral direction. You're going to lose your moral compass. And that's why the communists, they had no problem just mass murder. Oh, we got some problem. We got some problem with the kulaks. Just throw them in the gulags. You know, we can starve out. You know, the Holodomor. We'll just go ahead and starve out everybody in Ukraine. No moral problem with it, because they're not informed by the Christian ethic. So even a lot of people don't realize that they are informed by the Christian ethic, even if they aren't Christians. And so there is a certain reverence that a lot of people who are at least intelligent understand. Okay, maybe I don't believe all this stuff, but I do at least have a reverence for the teachings and for the moral standards that Christianity has created. And those people are all going to be turned off by what they see if we hold these hearings. So let's continue this article real quick. The more the Democrats insist they will never, under any circumstance, vote in favor of a Trump nominee, the less legitimate it seems to have them spend days asking questions to arrive at a conclusion they have already reached. Again, it's not about the conclusions that they reach. It's about exposing to America who the Democrats really are, even further. They say at the end of the day, the woman chosen for this important role is likely to wind up raising her right hand to be sworn into a swarm of animosity the Democrats will have aimed at her. The sham hearing will be a shameless spectacle that American people don't need. Yes, we do, though. That's the point. Is they think that all it's going to do is further the divide between people. It's going to give us another issue, another wedge issue that divides us. We're already as divided as we could possibly be. I mean, taking this away, taking these hearings away, isn't going to be, you're not all of a sudden going to have a quiet news cycle and then everybody who is on opposite sides of the aisle forgets that, you know, they've been either called or have been calling everybody else a racist, bigoted, homophobe, whatever, and bashing them over the head, calling them a Nazi, and treating them like absolute garbage. You know, or us on the right who just make fun of them for it because we actually have a sense of humor. That's not going away just because we don't hold hearings. That is the sign. That is the zeitgeist that we're living in, is political animosity. This is, you can talk about piling onto it, but what's one more grain of sand in that pile? You know, especially if it could potentially benefit the Republicans and Trump, for people to see how zealously they will go after religion. But it doesn't really matter because, like they said, she's going to get confirmed anyway. And Josh Hawley now says that the Senate could confirm a Supreme Court nominee sooner than Halloween. So Senator Josh Hawley said that there could be a new Supreme Court justice ready to be on the bench sooner than the end of October. On Wednesday, Hawley said he believes it is not only necessary to confirm a judge of the High Court before Election Day, but also doable. And it is going to be necessary because we are going to have the most contested election ever because Democrats have been pushing this fraudulent bullshit mail-in balloting on us ever since they decided to lock the entire country down because of COVID. And they have tried to keep it locked down in order to do this. I think it's going to backfire on them. And I think I've even heard that some of them are starting to walk back on their claims that mail-in balloting is a safe and secure process because people see through it. People see through it. And there's a good chance that this is going to go to the Supreme Court, and we cannot risk a 4-4 split. How are we ever going to come to a resolution with a 4-4 split? There is only one way, and that's called guns in the streets. We don't want to see that. We don't want guns in the streets. So we need to be able to uphold our institutions and have an odd number court so that they will actually be able to decide what happened in the election. So he says, I think we could go even faster than Halloween, if that and that includes a full set of public hearings as well as a full 30 hours of debate on the Senate floor. That's what the Senate rules call for in the case of a Supreme Court nominee. We could do all of that and be ready to vote before the election. At the end of the day, it's coming, left. It's coming, Democrats. You're going to get a new Supreme Court justice before the election, and it is going to be somebody who is going to uphold Second Amendment rights, uphold First Amendment rights, is going to be an originalist, textualist, constitutionalist. And you know what? That might include Roe v. Wade getting turned over. You're going to have to deal with it because it was an illegal ruling to begin with, and it has been the very basis for so much political strife in this country. How can you be so dead set on the right to kill a baby? At the end of the day, all the excuses that they have for it are rooted in selfishness. It's about a woman's choice. The woman had the choice before she did the deed. Now, of course, you can make the arguments about rape and all that, but those make up a very small number of abortion cases. It's mostly just women who decide they don't want the baby, or maybe the man ends up walking out on them and they say, oh, I can't do this by myself. We're going to end it. Whatever the situation is, it's always about how is this, more often than not, almost always, to the woman about how is this negatively going to affect my life. And I don't believe in living a life that is totally self-centered like that, especially at the cost of another human life. That is not moral, that is not virtuous. And as the founders said, only a moral and virtuous society is fit to govern themselves. I like our ability to be able to govern ourselves. So we need to overturn Roe v. Wade, just get it done, get it off the books, and end this decades-long charade that it's some settled law, because it is falsely settled law. It was falsely decided upon law. It was an activist ruling. So even abortion aside, just taking away that whole idea that the Democrats can go in and circumvent the Constitution through the judiciary. I think repealing Roe v. Wade would send a powerful message on the constitutional front to the Democrats. Anyways, guys, that's the video. Please go ahead and hit the thumbs up if you haven't. Share this video if you haven't. Also, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, or you probably won't ever see my videos pop up, because we all know it's voices like mine that are taken out back and old yellered by the folks at Big Tech. Also, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Parler. And if you would like to help this channel, financially speaking, I could use it, there are links to my Subscribestar, Patreon, and PayPal down in the description below. Anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.